Hello and welcome to B School Erudite. I'm Banu Sivakrishna. Today we are starting Unit 4 of AQA A Level Business, Operational Performance. Now, if Unit 3 marketing was all about getting customers to want your product, Unit 4 is about actually making it. Without burning down the factory, without running down out of ingredients, and without your customers waiting 3 weeks for a sandwich, operations is the engine room of any business. It's where raw materials turn into finished goods, where chaos turns into order, and where costs can either sink or you make fortune. Over the next 180 minutes, yes, it could be a long video. We are going deep as it's a very long unit. You'll understand how businesses like Zara, Amazon, Toyota, and even local bakeries make decisions about efficiency, quality, supply chains, and technology. And yes, there will be maths, but the good kind, simple, the kind that gets you marks. Let's turn the key and start the engine because marketing makes the promise, operations fulfills the promise. Marketing says that you will get an Amazon delivery within 2 days. Operations gets you that. Domino's marketing team says that the pizza would be delivered in 30 minutes. Then what happens? Operations has to deliver it. So marketing makes a promise on social media, website, newspapers, or promotions, but operations does it on ground reality. So every business, whether it's a car factory or a hairdresser, follows the same simple model: inputs, transformation, outputs. Inputs are the raw materials like labor, capital, and land. For a pizza shop, inputs are dough, cheese, and a chef, and an oven. Transformation is the process of chopping, spreading, and baking. Output is the final product, a pizza that someone actually wants to pay for. Here's the secret: operations is all about doing the transformation better than your rivals. If you can turn 1 pound of dough into a 10-pound pizza faster and with fewer burnt crusts, you win. If you can't, you close. Simple as that. The four main operational objectives we have are: most textbooks give you a long list, but let's focus on the big four and three that complement. So let's start with the first big four: cost, quality, speed, and flexibility. Cost is about making each unit as cheaply as possible. Quality is about meeting customer expectations. No one, including you, wants a car with a steering wheel that falls off. Speed is about how quickly you go from order to delivery. Flexibility is about adapting when things change, like swapping from making SUVs to making face shields during a pandemic. Now, here's the first hard truth of operations: you cannot be the best at all four at once. You have to choose, prioritize, and that choice will shape everything else. Even your exam answers, whatever you choose, you have to defend it. So let's look into the internal influences on objectives. We'll get very deep into that very soon, but let's just have a quick review. The other things we are learning from management decisions, we learned about corporate objectives, the unit 2. Then we learned about marketing, we learned about finance in the next unit, and we will also learn about human resource in the next unit. And all these influences affect on the operational objectives. So what decides which business chases? First, look inside the business. If the corporate objective is profit maximization, operations will focus on cost reduction. If the marketing team promise next day delivery, then speed becomes king. If the finance department has a tiny budget, you can't afford expensive robots. So you focus on low cost labor. And if your workforce is highly skilled, quality might be your natural strength. So quality should be your main strength then. So internal factors are the hand you're dealt. A smart operations manager play that hand very well. So the first objective is cost. Now let's go each objective, the four big ones and the three complementing objectives, about how we have these as objectives and why do we need these as objectives. The first is cost, the most common objective because it directly hits the bottom line. Unit cost is the cost of making one single item. Lower unit cost means higher profit or lower prices to crush competitors. How do you reduce unit cost? Economies of scale. Buy in bulk, use bigger machines, new technology, robots don't ask for pay rises. So lean production, which means cutting down on waste, cut waiting time, cut anything that doesn't add value. Think about IKEA. They sell flat pack furniture. Why? Because shipping a flat box costs less than shipping an assembled wardrobe. That's a cost objective driving the whole business model. Now, the next objective is quality. It doesn't mean expensive, like Louis Vuitton, Chanel, and Dior all the time. It means fit for purpose. A cheap ballpoint pen is high quality if it writes smoothly and doesn't leak. A luxury watch is high quality if it keeps perfect time for decades. So how do you achieve quality? Use good raw materials. Train your staff properly. Create a culture where everyone cares about getting it right the first time. That's total quality management, or TQM. And here's the kicker: poor quality is expensive. Returns, refunds, angry customers, lost reputation, all of that costs more than doing it right the first time. So, quality isn't a cost, it's an investment for the future benefits. Now, let's look at an activity. I want you to think with your friend or anyone, or your classmate, or your cousin or brother in your home. A quick thought experiment. Look at Ryanair versus Emirates. Ryanair is cheap. You pay for everything, even water, once you get inside. Emirates is expensive, but you get live flat beds and champagne and everything. Can a business be both the cheapest and the highest quality? Almost never. Because to be cheap, you sacrifice materials, service, and extras. To be high quality, you spend more. Trying to do both often leaves you stuck in the middle. Neither cheap enough for budget customers nor good enough for luxury buyers. That's the trade off, and you must choose one. Should I be cheap or should I be a luxury? So, you can think and discuss your thoughts with your friends the same thing. Now, let's look at the next objectives. Speed is about speed of response. It's about the time from click to customer. In the age of Amazon Prime, waiting a week feels like a lifetime. How do you improve speed? Efficient processes, no bottlenecks, and good logistics, reliable delivery partners, and modern technology, automated ordering processing, and also if somebody doesn't like the product, they take a refund and you get the return. So think about Domino's. Their entire brand promise is speed, 30 minutes or the pizza is free. That forces their operations to be incredibly efficient. But speed comes with the risks. Rushed drivers have accidents. Rushed chefs burn pizzas. Trade-offs everywhere. You have to choose. If you want authentic pizza, you can't really get it done in 10 minutes. It takes time to actually do it everything from the scratch. So you have to choose priorities accordingly. Now, the fourth is flexibility. It is the ability to adapt. If we talk about flexibility, this is the ability of the operations process to change quickly and easily. There are two key types here. First, product flexibility. Can you easily switch from making one product to another? A bakery that makes different types of bread, white bread, wholemeal, sourdough, wheat bread, that's product flexibility. When the pandemic hit, many distilleries switched from making gin to making hand sanitizer. That's product flexibility, saving the business. Second is volume flexibility. Can you quickly increase or decrease production to meet changes in demand? A factory that can add extra staff at Christmas or scale back in January has volume flexibility. A theme park that can open extra food stalls on a sunny day, that's volume flexibility. Why does flexibility matter? Because the world is unpredictable. If you're rigid, you die. If you're flexible, you survive. Now let's look at Zara's case study of how they actually prioritize best operational model. Zara is a masterclass in speed and flexibility. Most fashion retailers design clothes 6 months in advance. Zara, a Spanish fashion company owned by Inditex Group, does it in 3 weeks. How? They keep production close to home. Factories in Spain and Portugal, and not just in Asia. They use advanced logistics and real-time sales data. If a new trend appears on TikTok on Monday, Zara can have a similar dress in stores by Friday. That's operational excellence. And it means they rarely get stuck with unsold stock because they only make what's already trending. Flexibility plus speed equals competitive advantage. Now let's look at the next objective. Dependability means doing what you promised. If you say the delivery will arrive between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m., it arrives at 2:15. If you say the car has a 5-year warranty, you honor it. So dependability builds trust. And trust builds repeat customers, and that eventually gives you goodwill. A business that's fast but unreliable, like a courier that promises next day but delivers 3 days late, will lose customers fast. Dependability is often overlooked, but it's the foundation of brand value. Now, let's look at the environmental objectives. More and more businesses are setting environmental goals, reducing waste, cutting emissions, using sustainable materials. This isn't just tree hugging, it's customer demand, legal pressure, and often cost saving in the long run. For example, Walmart reduced its packaging and saved millions of dollars while also spending less plastic to landfill. So environmental objectives can align with cost objectives, but not always. Sometimes sustainable materials cost more. Another trade-off here. So now let's look at added value is another objective number 7. It is the difference between the cost of raw materials and the price of the finished products. Raw potatoes cost, let's say, 20 cent. A bag of branded crisps cost 2 euros. The operations process added a value of 1.80 euros. How? By cleaning, slicing, frying, seasoning, packaging, and branding. Operations is where raw stuff becomes valuable stuff. The more value you add, the higher your profit margin, or the more room you have to lower prices and steal market share. Now let's look at the core conflicts, trade-offs that you have. Let me say this loudly, guys. A business cannot be the best at everything. You cannot have Formula One speed, Rolls-Royce quality, budget of airline costs, and a chameleon's flexibility. It's impossible. You must choose. The choice is the heart of operational strategy, and the examiners love asking you about trade-offs. The operational trade-off. It's an A-level skill you have to build of understanding. A trade-off happens when improving one objective, making another worse. If you want higher quality, you usually need better materials. That raises costs. If you want faster speed, you might rush and lower quality. If you want more flexibility, customizing every order, you lose economies of scale. Your job as a manager is to decide which objective matters most for your strategy and accept the sacrifices. Let's see some common operational trade-offs. Let's list them. Quality versus cost. Better leather costs more. Flexibility versus cost. Customization is expensive if you want to be very flexible. Speed versus quality. It rushes, causes mistakes. Environmental versus cost. Sustainable materials often have a premium. So remember, trade-offs are not failures. They are deliberate choices. A budget airline that spends money on free champagne has lost its identity. Let's look at influences on operational objectives. What determines which trade-off a business makes? There are two types of influences, as we discussed internal before, and then we also have external. Internal influences come from inside the business. Corporate objective, if the CEO wants to be a market leader, cost might be a priority. Finance, a high budget lets you invest in quality. Human resources, a skilled workforce can handle flexibility. And marketing, if the ad says luxury, operations must deliver luxury. They can't be delivering fast fashion. You can't be saying Louis Vuitton and then you deliver quality of Primark or H&M. That doesn't make a trade-off. So everything connects. Operations doesn't exist in a silo. Now we look at the external influences. Pestle. You all know Pestle, right, from the unit 2. Political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental. External factors are the world outside. Economic. A recession forces everyone to focus on cost. Legal. A new environmental law forces green objectives, technology, advancements. New automation lets you improve speed and cost. And competitors, that is environment, competitive environment. If Amazon offers next day delivery, you have to. For example, in India, Flipkart has to do that. If Amazon is doing it, in Poland, if Allegro is doing it, Alibaba should also do it. If Amazon is doing it, Temu should also do it. So operational objectives are not chosen in a vacuum. They are a response to both internal strategy and external pressure. Also, as I mentioned, Amazon and Temu, that doesn't really cut off because Temu doesn't promise quick delivery. They promise low cost, affordable and cheap. They promise not great quality. They just promise the product. And if you don't like it, you can return it. So that's how it works in 10. But Amazon focuses on quick delivery and also good quality and reliability. So now let's look at operational makeover. If you're in a classroom, I suggest you have this debate by pausing this slide and then you understand how to actually come up with an operational makeover, how to choose the right objectives, which is the winning strategy, which is a winning objective. That is something you can find. And now we can go to the next chapter within this unit where we will be learning about analyzing operational performance. We have the objectives from the previous chapter 3.4.1, but now we come to 3.4.2 where we understand by analyzing those operational objectives. So what is the performance they are delivering? Okay, I have an objective of cost. Am I being of low cost or high cost? Okay, I have an objective of quality. Am I being of good quality or low quality? How do you analyze this? You can't improve what you don't measure. So you have to measure from goals to data. Objectives are the what. Key performance indicators like KPIs are the how much. We are going to look at the three crucial KPIs: labor productivity, unit costs, and capacity utilization. What is operational performance is the business converting into inputs into outputs. Are we efficient? Are we cost effective? Are we meeting the customer needs? The numbers will tell us. And we have three pillars that defines operational analysis. AQA focuses on three critical areas for you to analyze operational performance. First, labor productivity. How hard is the workforce working? Second, unit cost. How much does it cost to make one item? Third, capacity and utilization. Are we using our facilities fully or is there waste? So think of these as the three vital signs of an operations department, like your pulse, blood pressure, and temperature. If any of them is off, the business is sick. And if all three are bad, call the undertaker. So let's come to understanding each of them in detail. Labor productivity is total output divided by the number of employees. It tells you how much each worker produces. Here's a fun fact, guys. In the 1970s, a typical car plant needed about 100 hours of labor to build one car. Today, thanks to automation and lean methods, is down to around 20 hours. That's a five-fold increase in labor productivity. But here's the catch. Those workers who used to do the welding, they now run the robots. So productivity isn't about working harder. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. So labor productivity, we have an example. A shoe factory produces 10,000 pairs of shoes a month. It employs 50 staff members. What is the productivity here? 10,000 divided by 50 equals 200 pairs per employee per month. So now what does that number mean? If a rival factory has a productivity of 250, they are more efficient. But if their shoes fall apart after 3 wears, that high productivity is useless. So always pair productivity with quality. Next, labor productivity. How do we improve it? How to actually boost this labor productivity that we've been discussing? Three main levels. First, training. A skilled worker makes fewer mistakes and works faster. Toyota famously trains new staff for 6 months before they touch a production line. That's an investment, not a cost. Second, motivation. Happy workers work harder. Financial incentives, recognition, good management, all these things come into benefit. When John Lewis was a partnership, staff productivity was famously high because everyone felt like an owner. So better management and technology helps you organize the factory floor to reduce walking. Use softwares to track tasks. A famous study found that factory workers spend up to 30% of their day just walking to get tools. Fix that and productivity jumps. Let's have an evaluation. Is high productivity always good? Here's a cautionary tale. In the early 2000s, a large call center decided to measure productivity by calls per hour. Staff rushed through calls, didn't solve problems probably. So customers called back again and again. So actual productivity is solving the problem the first time went down. They were measuring the wrong thing. High labor productivity is great, but not if it kills quality, burns out staff, or increases rework. Always ask, what are we sacrificing to get that number? Now let's look into the second. Unit cost is average cost. Unit cost is total divided by total output. Total cost divided by total output, as you can see here. It is the ultimate measure of efficiency. Why? Because if your unit cost is lower than your competitors, you can either take higher profit or undercut them on price. A fun fact is in the 1990s, Dell computers had a unit cost that was about 15% lower than HP's. The tiny difference allowed Dell to offer lower prices and still make more profit. They became the number one PC maker for a while. Unit cost is the superpower. Now let's look at an example of unit cost. Let's do this math. Total cost is that's fixed plus variable are 50,000. Total output is 25,000 units. Unit cost is 50,000 divided by 25,000, that is 2 pounds or euros. So it costs the business £2 to make one item. To make a profit, the selling price must be above £2. If a competitor has unit cost of £1.50, they can sell at a £1.90 and still make profit while they're losing money. That's why unit cost is a weapon. Another quick race. Factory A costs 100,000 output. 50,000 is for unit cost is £2. Factory B costs £200,000. Output 40,000. Unit cost is £5. Factory C cost 50,000, 500,000 pounds and output is 250,000 pounds. Unit cost is £2. So factories A and C are equally efficient. Factory B is in serious trouble. As you can see here, their unit cost is more than double. What should they do? Either cut costs, cheaper materials, leaner processes, or increase output. Sell more, run extra shifts. If they do nothing, they're to the toast. So that's how it works. We learned just now about unit cost and we also learned about labor productivity. Now we come to the next, which is capacity utilization. Is the maximum possible output a business can produce in a given time period with its current resources. Think of it as the size of the pie. A cinema has 200 seats. Its capacity per showing is 200 people. It physically cannot sell 201 tickets because there is no way the 201th person can sit anywhere. So a bakery with two ovens can bake 500 loaves a day. That's its capacity. Understanding your capacity is the first step to using it well. Now let's see capacity utilization. This is the percentage of total capacity. As we learned in the previous slide, the total capacity that is actually being achieved. Formula: current output divided by maximum capacity times 100. If a hotel has 100 rooms and 60 are booked tonight, utilization is 60%. That means 60% of potential revenue is walking away. Fixed costs like rent, heating, and insurance are still there. So each occupied room has to cover more of these fixed costs. Low utilization is a silent profit killer. Now let's come to a calculation of capacity utilization. Let's run the numbers here. A hotel has 100 rooms, maximum capacity, 100 rooms. Tonight, 60 rooms are booked. Current output, that's 60. So 60 divided by 100 equals 0.6. Times 100 gives 60% utilization. 60%. So 40% of the rooms are empty. That's wasted revenue. Add 40% people also took the room at least for a discount. You would still made some money, right? So, but there's a twist. If the hotel drops prices to fill those empty rooms, they might get more customers, but at lower margins. It's a balancing act. Now, what is the ideal percentage? Is 100% always the goal? Surprisingly, no. Too low. Below 50% is bad. Unit costs are high because fixed costs are spread over few units. Too high, 100% is risky. No room for maintenance. Staff stress, no buffer for sudden orders. The ideal is usually around 90%. Efficient, low cost, but with a little spare capacity for emergencies. Think of a motorway. At 100% capacity, one accident causes gridlock. At 90% traffic flows. Operations is the same. Now let's look at a problem. Underutilization. What is it? Why is it a problem? Its utilization is low, unit cost rise, whole factory rent, lights, machinery, all of this will be affected. How to fix it? With better marketing and better rationalization. Now another problem is overutilization, where 99 to 100% is utilized. What happens when you're running at 99% or 100%? You are sweating your assets. Machines run constantly, no time for maintenance, so they break down more often. Staff get tired and stressed. Mistakes also increase, and you cannot say yes to new customers because you are already full. How to fix this situation of overutilization? Two options: outsource, pay another company to make some of your product, or expand, invest in a bigger factory or more machines. But expansion costs money and takes time. Another trade off. So now we can look at the gym problem. Here's a real world scenario. A local gym is operating at 100% capacity between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. Members are complaining they can't get on machines. Men are canceling their membership. What should the manager do? I'm asking you. Option A: raise prices to reduce demand. That lower utilizations, solves crowding, and even might increase revenue if the demand is inelastic. But risk: competitors might steal your price sensitive customers. And the option B you could choose as a manager is expand the building, add more machines. That increases capacity, so utilization falls to a comfortable level. But expansion is expensive. And what if demand drops next year? So comment down your answer, what you think, so others can also reply to what they think about your opinion. And I would say there is no perfect answer. That's why operations management is a decision making skill, not just a calculation. Just because they say something doesn't mean it will happen in reality. It can happen differently in Switzerland, differently in Singapore, differently in two different gyms in the same city. So the role of technology in efficiency is something we have to understand. It is the great enabler that lets you, let me, let all of us understand how we can actually enable our better value. Let me give you a story. When DHL introduced automated sorting machines in the warehouses, sorting speed increased by 300% and error rates dropped by 80%. That's technology improving productivity and quality at the same time. And there is something called a CAD, which is computer aided design. Speed up product development, robotics work 24 by 7 without errors, and IT systems track inventory in real time. Inventory is how much stock you have in the factory or your warehouse. But technology costs money upfront and it can make your workforce redundant. So, which is a human and ethical issue. So, technology decisions are not just about efficiency, they're about people too. Now, let's look at analyzing data over time. One number isn't enough. Don't just look at this year's data, look at the overall picture. If unit cost was €5 last year and 5.5 this year, efficiency is worsening. If labor productivity is rising year on year, the training programs is likely working. So here's an example. Always compare the data to previous year and competitors' data. Every operational improvement has a cost elsewhere. Let me give you a famous example. When Toyota first introduced just in time, they had amazing efficiency. But then a fire at a supplier's factory shut down all of Toyota's production for weeks. They were too efficient, too lean, and had no buffer. So increasing utilization to 100% reduces flexibility. Increasing productivity via speed may reduce quality. Reducing unit cost via cheaper materials may damage your brand. The best operation managers don't chase one metric blindly. They balance the trade-offs. Now let's look at an activity of a struggling bakery. Let's apply this. A bakery has high unit costs and is making a loss. Utilization is only 40%. The ovens are often empty, let's say 60% are empty. Staff are skilled but slow. There are two strategies. The first is increase sales. Offer happy hour discounts, supply local cafes, do wedding cakes. This raises output without increasing fixed cost, so utilization rises and unit cost fall. The second strategy is rationalize it. Sell one oven, move to smaller premises. This reduces maximum capacity. So the existing sales represent a higher utilization percentage from 40% to 80% overnight. Which is better? It depends. If you believe demand will grow, go for strategy one. If you think demand is stuck, go for strategy two. Operations is about judgment, not just maths. Let's recap what we learned in this chapter. The three formulas. You will see them in your exam. Write them down. Labor productivity is output divided by number of employees. Unit cost is total output. No, sorry, total cost divided by total output. And capacity utilization is current output divided by maximum capacity times 100. So memorize them, practice them, and love them and relate to them. Why are we using them and at what case? And how do we make value out of those formulas and those calculations in a case study question? Now, operations drives strategy. We will be learning strategy very deep in next year AQA A Level Business, Unit 7, 8, 9, and 10. But now, if we see how operations drives a strategy on a very generic level, here's the truth. From a real operations director I once met, he said, you can have the best marketing in the world, but if your operations are inefficient, you will eventually fall and fail on price or quality. Operations is not a back office function. It is the backbone of competitive advantage. Think about Amazon guys. Their marketing is fine, but their operational dominance, warehouses, logistics, and delivery is what really crushes rivals. Because with marketing, you can really do promotions and get into good perception, but to last it for these many years, you need good operations. Now, we will come to the next chapter, improving efficiency and productivity. As we move from measuring to improving, how do you actually make operations better? We will cover lean production, just in time, technology, economies of scale, and the dreaded diseconomies. So, here we understand that how to actually prioritize the right objectives. Now, defining the cost concept, defining efficiency and labor productivity. Let's be clear. Efficiency is the ability to accomplish something with the least amount of wasted time, money, and effort. It's about maximizing output from given inputs. Whereas labor productivity is the specific measure of workforce efficiency. Why does it matter? Because higher efficiency equals lower unit cost, equal higher profit margins, or lower prices for customers. It's the engine of profitability. Now let's understand how to improve labor productivity. We can do three things: train them, motivate them, or manage them better. So three levers again, but now with stories. Let's see training. When Starbucks baristas are properly trained, they make drinks faster and with fewer mistakes. That's productivity. Training helps it. Second, what do we see here? Motivation. A famous study at Hawthorne factory found that just paying attention to workers made them more productive. It's called Hawthorne effect. Happy workers work harder. And third, better management. A car plant recognized its tools so workers didn't have to walk 20 meters to get a wrench. Saved 2 seconds per task. Over a year, that saved thousands of hours. Now we come to understand lean production is the war on waste. Lean production comes from Toyota. It's about cutting waste. Anything that doesn't add value for the customer. Toyota identified 7 types of waste, or Muda means waste. Overproduction, making too much. Waiting, staff being idle doing nothing. The transport, moving things unnecessarily from one place to another. Defects, faulty products, inventory, too much stock, and motion, unnecessary movement by workers, over processing, doing more than the customer needs. Here's a fun fact too for us to know. Toyota once reduced the time to change a stamping press from 4 hours to 3 minutes. How? By studying every moment and eliminating waste. That's lean thinking. So let's look into the first lean method, just in time. JIT, just in time, means stock arrives exactly when it's needed. Not a day earlier, not a day later, zero inventory, no warehouse, no empty parts. So no warehouses full of parts that are waiting to be get done. So they come just in time you need to start the production. What is the benefit of this? You save storage costs and cash isn't tied up in stock. And the risk is if a supplier is late, the whole factory stops. Just in time is efficient but fragile. It works best with reliable suppliers and predictable demand. Here's a famous example. When the earthquake hit Japan in 2011, many car makers using JIT had to stop production for months because a single supplier of a tiny chip was damaged. That's the dark side of JIT. Now let's look into the second lean method. Kaizen is policy of improving continuously, bottom up, taking ideas from your employees, workers, and trying to improve on that. And then also another thing is it improves your entire team morale. They feel listened to, the management feels involved, the employees feel involved, and you have to create an employee experience where everybody is asked questions, they're taken as equal people. Only then you can do that. Now let's look at an activity. If you put lean thinking into practice, look at a typical office. Where's the waste? First, clutter, time wasted searching for documents. A study found the average office workers spend 1.5 hours a week looking for lost papers. That's nearly 2 weeks a year. Second layout, if staff have to walk far to the printer or the manager, that's movement waste. Third distraction, a noisy, crowded environment leads to errors, which then needed fixing. This is defect waste. So your mission as an operations manager is to walk around your own workspace or even your bedroom. Where is the waste? A clean, organized space is an efficient space. These are the points we get from the discussion. If you discuss it with your teammates or your classmates about how to reduce waste, clutter, layout, distraction, and stuff. Now we understand how to use technology to improve efficiency. If we talk about machines, robots don't sleep, don't ask for holidays, don't ask for higher salaries, and don't make typos. They're perfect for repetitive tasks. So the pros here are they work 24 by 7, consistent quality, long-term cost savings. And the cons of using robots is high initial capital cost, maintenance, and you might have to make people redundant. A fun fact here is the first industrial robot, Unimate, started working at General Motors plant in 1961. Die-cast car parts. GM, General Motors, was so nervous they locked it in a cage. Today, over 3 million robots work in factories worldwide. CAD, as we already discussed before, CAD, computer-aided design, speeds up product development. CAM is computer-aided manufacturing, speeds of production. Together, they shorten lead times dramatically. Let's look at the case study of Amazon's Kiva robots. Amazon's warehouses used to have workers walking miles each day to find products. One day, one worker might walk 10 miles in a shift. That's time not picking and packing. Then Amazon bought a robotics company called Kiva. Now Kiva robots bring the shelves to the workers. So the result is a massive reduction in movement waste. Amazon can pick, pack, and ship orders faster than any competitor. That's operational dominance. And here's a fun fact. Amazon now has 500,000 robots in its warehouses. They don't replace humans entirely. Humans still pick items from the shelves the robots bring, but one robot can save a worker hours of work walking every shift. Now let's look at improving capacity utilization. If utilization is too low, below 60%, unit costs are high. Two solutions. First, increase demand, advertise more, increase the marketing, cut prices, find new customers. That raises output without raising fixed costs. Second, rationalize. Reduce your capacity. Sell unused machines, close a shift, move to smaller premises. That makes your existing sales represent a higher percentage. Which is better? It depends. If you think demand will grow, go for option one. If the market is shrinking, option two might be the only way to survive, which is rationalizing. Now, improving efficiency through quality, which is right first time. Here's a powerful idea. Poor quality is expensive. Every defect is a waste. You've already spent money on materials, labor, and energy. Then you throw the product away or rework it. So, quality control is inspecting finished products and throwing away bad ones. That's detection. It's inefficient because waste has already happened. On the other hand, quality assurance is checking quality at every stage of production, every stage, every time to work on stopping errors happening. That's prevention. A famous study found that it costs about £1 to prevent a defect, £10 to find it before shipping, and £100 to fix it after the customer complains. Prevention is always cheaper than making the mess and then trying to clean it. So now let's look at economies of scale. This is a very interesting concept. This is the world of big business. Economies of scale occur when unit cost falls as the scale of operation increases. Bigger is cheaper. Why? Because fixed costs like rent, R&D, marketing are spread over millions of units. A small bakery pays £1,000 rent a month. If they make 1,000 loaves, rent per loaf is £1. A giant factory pays £100,000 rent but makes 1 million loaves. Rent per loaf is 10%. That's the power of scale. So economies of scale by definition is using a lot, no, using little to create a lot, or using a lot to create even more. Let me give you a real number. In the 1970s, a small car maker needed about 100, no, needed around £1,000 per car in fixed cost. Ford, making millions of cars, had fixed costs of just £50 per car. That's a 95% cost advantage. Small car makers couldn't compete on price. That's why so many industries are dominated by a few giant firms. Scale crushes the little guys, but scale also brings risks. We'll get to those faster or later. Let's see. Key types of economies of scale are purchasing, technical, managerial, and financial. We can also include marketing, which I'll teach you. So the first is purchasing economies of scale is bulk buying discounts. Tesco buying milk by the tanker gets a much lower price per liter than a corner shop. Whereas technical economies of scale is large, specialized machinery. A paper mill costs £500 million to build, but it produces paper at half the cost of a small mill. Only big firms can afford it. Third, managerial economies. Hiring specialist. A small firm has one manager doing everything: accounts, HR, marketing, and doing none of them well. A big firm hires a specialist: CFO, CMO, CHRO. Each expert improves efficiency. And the last is financial economies. Lower interest rates. A large, safe firm like Amazon can borrow at 2% from a bank, 2% interest. A startup pays 50% interest because it might fail. That's a huge advantage. So, if we see economies of scale, the efficiency gap, this is why firms often crush small rivals. A small bakery buys flour at retail price, which is €1 per kg. A giant like Warburton's buys flour at wholesale, 40 pennies per kg. That's a 60% cost advantage before they even start baking. The only way for a small firm to survive is to compete on something other than price. For example, quality, service, niche products, or location. Direct price competition with a giant is a suicide in today's market. So if we see which economies of scale by after another, the first is technical economies of scale, as I told you. Tesla's Gigafactory in Nevada is a technical economy on steroids. The building is so big you could fit 93 football pitches inside by automating 90% of the battery production line. Tesla reduced battery cost by over 70%. That's the difference between a £40,000 electric car and a £70,000 one. Buy those robots cost billion, only massive scale makes the investment pay off. Small EV startups simply cannot compete on battery cost like the way BYD and Tesla and big players can do. That's why many of them go bust. So now we see purchasing economies of scale. The power of Walmart is the ultimate example of purchasing power. They have over 10,000 stores worldwide. They buy in such massive volume that they can dictate prices to suppliers. If you want to sell to Walmart, you agree to their price or you don't sell. Here's a fun fact. If Walmart were a country, it would have been the 24th largest economy in the world alone, bigger than Sweden or bigger than Poland. Their purchasing scale is bigger than the GDP of many nations. That's why local mom and pop shops can't compete on price. Now we look at marketing economies of scale, which is optional, which might not really come in the syllabus, but I'm willing to teach you. So Coca-Cola spends billions on global advertising, Super Bowl ads, Olympic sponsorship, billboards everywhere. But because they sell billions of bottles, the marketing cost per bottle is almost zero. A small local soda brand might spend £1,000 on radio ad to sell 1,000 bottles. That's £1 per bottle. Coca-Cola spends €1 million on a TV ad to sell 100 million bottles. That's 1 penny per bottle, 1 cent per bottle. That's marketing economies of scale. The big brand can outspend you and still have lower per unit marketing costs. Now let's look at managerial and financial economies. Managerial economies is Google hires PhD level specialists for tiny niche tasks. One person works only on search algorithm speed, another works only on ad placement. A small firm hires one manager to do everything poorly. So specialization improves efficiency. Google can hire 1,000 product marketing managers, 100 working only on GTM, 100 only on content, 100 only on competitive intelligence, 300 only on sales enablement. But in a startup, they'll have 10 people to work on all of these things across the markets and across the geographies. That's why managerial economies of scale comes into picture. Now let's look at financial economies. Amazon can borrow money at 2% interest, as I told you earlier, because they are a safe bet. A startup pays 15% interest to the bank because they might fail. That 13% difference can be the margin between profit and loss. Scale brings cheap money. Now we understand the external economies of scale. External economies happen when an entire industry grows in one area. The classic story is Silicon Valley. Tech firms there benefit because all the best engineers, specialists, lawyers, and venture capitalists are right next door. A startup in Silicon Valley gets external economies just by being there. They can hire talent, raise money, and find partners faster than a startup in a remote town. Another example is the City of London. Financial firms cluster there because they share infrastructure, expertise, and a labor pool. That's why finance is so concentrated in a few square miles. If you see in Paris, it's all about fashion. If you see in Switzerland, it's all about banks and luxury. If you see in South India, it's mostly software consulting firms and IT firms. So you have the market ecosystem there. Now, let's have a debate on the scale. A successful local bakery is considering buying 10 other bakeries to become a regional chain. What economies of scale could they gain? Bulk buying, flour and sugar, purchasing economies. One marketing campaign for all stores, marketing economies. Hiring a finance specialist, that is managerial economy. But what diseconomies might appear? We'll get to that in a moment. For now, think about growth. Is bigger always better? No. Let's look at the case of Nokia. Look at what he's saying. We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost. That's the CEO of Nokia. Nokia was once the world leader in mobile phones. In 2007, they had 50% market share. Then the iPhone launched. Nokia's engineers saw the threat. They built prototypes of touchscreen phones, but Nokia's massive bureaucracy was so slow that decisions took months. Middle managers argued about budgets, committed reviewing everything. By the time Nokia launched a competitive smartphone, it was too late. So scale killed their innovation. While Apple, then much smaller, moved fast, Nokia was stuck in the endless meetings. That's a diseconomy of scale. Now we see Nokia failed because of bureaucracy. When bureaucracy becomes bad, what happens? When a business grows too large, unit costs can start to rise. Why? Three main causes. Communication. Messages get lost in long chains of command. Memo from the CEO might take weeks to reach the shop floor. And by then, it's irrelevant. So coordination is important. It's hard to manage thousands of staff across different countries. One department doesn't know what other is doing. So duplication of effort happens. So here's the motivation. Staff feel like just a number. They don't care as much. Absenteeism rises, productivity fails. A famous study found that factories with over 500 workers had significantly lower output per worker than smaller plants. There's a sweet spot. Beyond it, diseconomies eat your profits. If you see another reason, that is employee motivation. Employees feeling left out, they not feeling like they belong to this world. They feeling treated like too much of hard HRM, and that leads to high staff turnover. Now let's look at capital versus labor intensity, the strategic choice. Every business faces a choice: rely on machines or rely on people. Labor intensive, like relying on humans, hairdresser, hotel, restaurant, hands-made crafts, they have low setup cost, high flexibility, but hard to scale and quality can vary. Whereas capital intensive relies on machines, oil refinery, car plant, automated warehouse, huge setup cost, low unit cost, consistent quality but low flexibility. You can't easily switch from making cars to making bicycles. The choice depends on your strategy. Luxury hotels stay labor intensive because personal service is their USP. Budget airlines go capital intensive. One plane does the work of many crew. So now here we look at the supply chain management. How do we improve all of these problems? How do we deal with all that? How do we improve the flow? So supply chain management is about working closely with the suppliers to improve efficiency. There are two key benefits. One is Flexibility, another is quality. As you know, flexibility, if your suppliers can deliver quickly, you can hold less stock. That enables just in time. You bring the stuff only when it's needed. Second is quality. If your suppliers deliver perfect materials, your own quality control costs drop. No need to inspect every incoming part. So a famous example is Toyota. Always, if you talk about operations management, you'd be hearing about Toyota again and again. Toyota sends its own engineers to work at supplier factories to help them improve. That's investment in the supply chain. It pays back in reliability and quality. Now we look at inventory control charts, managing stock levels. Let's get visual. An inventory control chart helps you manage stock levels. First, buffer stock, the minimum safety level. You never go below this. Reorder level, the point at which you order new stock. Then lead time, how long it takes for new stock to arrive. If you sell 1,000 or let's say even 100 units per day, lead time is 5 days, and you want 200 units buffer. Your reorder level is 100 times 5 plus 200, that is 700 units. When stock hits 700, order more. By the time it arrives, you'll have used the 500 units sold during lead time, and you land exactly at the buffer of 200. That's the max of inventory management. Now let's look at the decision. Outsourcing, buying versus making. Outsourcing means paying another company to do a task for you. Apple designs iPhones in California but outsources assembly to Foxconn in China. So what is the benefit here? You focus on your core business, the design, marketing, and reduce fixed costs. No factory, no assembly workers, no payroll taxes. And the drawback is loss of control over quality and ethics. Foxconn has faced allegations of poor working conditions. That reputation damage falls on Apple, not Foxconn. So outsourcing is a trade-off. Cost and focus versus control and risk. Now we understand the evaluation, the operational trade-offs. JIT versus security, how to choose. Automation versus flexibility. Efficiency versus ethics. These are the kind of trade-offs you have to choose in a real business environment. And also we can recap the key methods as you can pause and look back and see if you understood all of them or not. And lean versus JIT is reduce waste, speed up flow. Technology is automation for consistency and lower cost, whereas HR and training of employees create skilled staff, they work faster and better. And scale, the growth lowers unit cost, but watch for diseconomies that can fire against you and extreme growth. As you saw, Amazon making employees feeling alienated, or Nokia CEOs, communication not reaching employees, or employees feedback not reaching the CEO on how to prioritize the next mobile phone launch, and they can struggle in the market. So here's a quote by Peter Drucker: efficiency versus effectiveness. Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. That's what Peter Drucker said. You can have the most efficient factory in the world, making the lowest cost widgets. But if nobody wants widgets, you will still fail. Operations must align with marketing. Efficiency without effectiveness is just fast failure. It's slow death and fast failure. So now we come to the fourth chapter of operations unit. As we deep dive into quality, arguably the most important operational objective for customer facing businesses, because quality is what customers remember. Quality is not just luxury. Quality, as I said, is not just luxury. It's about a product or service. It's about a product or service being fit for purchase, fit for purpose, and meeting customer expectations. That includes these four: reliability, durability, aesthetics, and speed. Reliability, does it work every time? Durability, does it last? Aesthetics, does it look good? Speed, is the service fast enough? A cheap pen can be high quality if it writes every time. An expensive watch can be low quality if it breaks after a month. So quality is about delivering the promise. It's not only about being premium cost. So tangible versus intangible quality. Tangible quality is quality can be tangible, things you can touch and measure: appearance, reliability, functions, after sales service. Or intangible is things you can feel or experience: brand image, exclusivity, customer service. Here's the story: a friend of mine bought a cheap suitcase online. It arrived with a broken wheel. Tangible quality failure. He complained. The chatbot replied 3 days later. Intangible quality failure. He never bought from the brand again. Both types matter. Had the chatbot escalated the request to a senior manager or a support agent very soon and he got a refund, that would have been a good intangible quality. But still, even that didn't happen. Why does quality matter? Let me give you a number. A study by the American Society for Quality found that poor quality costs business between 15% and 20% of the sales revenue. That's not a small rounding error. That's the potentially all of your profit. Quality matters for four big reasons. First is it can be your USP, unique selling point. If you are known for quality, you stand out. Second, it gives you pricing power. People will pay more for something that won't break. Third, it reduces cost. Fewer returns, less waste, fewer angry customers, service calls. Fourth, it builds brand loyalty. A happy customer comes back. A delighted customer tells their friends. Quality is not a cost. It's an investment that pays dividends. And let's see how to approach better quality control versus quality assurance. There are two main ways to manage quality. Think of them as two different mindsets. Quality control is about catching mistakes at the end, like a goalkeeper. Quality assurance is about preventing mistakes throughout, like a defense that never lets the ball get to the goalkeeper. We'll explore both, but alert, prevention is always cheaper and better, as I told you before. Quality control is a concise subheading that supports the main measures, inspection at the end of the line, whereas quality assurance happens at every stage. Quality assurance, as I said, inspection at the end of the line. It identifies faulty products before they ship. The downside, you already spent money making the product faulty. It's wasteful. Whereas quality assurance focuses on the process, not just the product. Aims to prevent defects from occurring before. Everyone is responsible for quality. The goal is to build it right the first time. Here's a simple analogy. QC, quality control, is like a doctor diagnosing a disease after you're sick. QA is like a healthy lifestyle that stops you getting sick in the first place. We learned quality control and quality assurance, and the goal of quality assurance is getting it right first time, as I told you. And if we evaluate the pros and cons, we can understand quality assurance has pretty good pros. Now let's look at total quality management. Is not just a process, it's a philosophy. It commits to a culture. TQM commits to a culture of quality where quality is the most important objective. In TQM, every employee is a link in the chain. You treat the next person in the line as your customer. If you do poor work, you are letting down your internal customer. And the ultimate goal is get it right first time, every time. A famous TQM story, this time not Toyota but Motorola, in the 1980s was losing market share to Japanese competitors. They adopted TQM and launched a program called Six Sigma, aiming for just 3.4 defects per million opportunities. It saved them billions. Quality isn't soft, it's hard business. Now we look at Kaizen, the Japanese word that means continuous improvement. It's central to TQM. Instead of big, expensive, risky innovations, Kaizen focuses on small daily improvements suggested by the workers. Over time, 1,000 small improvements lead to massive efficiency gains. A worker suggests moving a tool rack 2 meters closer, that saves 3 seconds per task, times 1,000 tasks a day, that's 50 minutes saved, times 200 working days, that's 166 hours a year, all from one small suggestion. Here's a fun fact. Toyota receives over 1 million suggestions from employees every year. Over 90% of them are implemented. That's Kaizen real action. Now let's learn about benchmarking, which means comparing your performance against the best in class, not just direct competitors, the best in any industry. If you want to improve customer service, benchmark against the Ritz-Carlton. If you want logistics, benchmarks against Amazon. If you want lean production, benchmark against Toyota. You measure your performance against this, identify the gap, and then implement changes to close the gap. You measure your performance against this, identify the gap, and then implement changes to close the gap, as I told you just now. A factory, let's say a story, let's forget about a factory, I'll tell you another story. When Ford wanted to improve their accounts payable department, they benchmarked against Mazda. They found that Mazda processed invoices with 5 people. Ford had 500 people doing that. 500. So Ford copied Mazda's system and cut their team to 100. That's power of benchmarking. Now let's look at a slide which talks about quality circles. Is a small group of workers from same area who regularly meet to solve production problems. The key benefit is staff know the problems and the motivation satisfies Maslow's esteem needs theory. Now let's look at the cost of quality. Prevention, inspection, and failure. So, if we read this slide by pausing it, you'll understand quality is never free. It's usually not free. So, improving quality costs money, but bad quality costs more. There are three categories of quality costs. Prevention costs, training, maintenance, quality planning. These are the cheapest. Spending €1 on prevention saves €10 later. Inspection cost, inspectors, testing equipment, audits, these are medium. You need some inspection, but too much is wasteful. Next, failure cost. Scrap, rework, warranty claims, lost customers, legal fees. These are the most expensive and they're often hidden. A famous example is a car manufacturer calculated that a single defective brake part that caused a recall cost them 50 million euros. That recall could have been prevented with 50,000 euros of better training, but prevention is always cheaper. That's why I said it before. Now we understand the benefits of improving quality, increased sales volume, its reputation attracts customers, and also having good quality, improving it, price premium. You can charge more. If you are a Zara, if you improve your quality, your specific merchandise, you can sell it in Massimo Dutti because both of them are owned by same Inditex group. So reduced cost, less waste, and fewer returns, and retailer confidence. Shop stock reliable brands. Now let's do an evaluation. Is quality always the answer? See, context matters. For a budget brand like Primark, good enough quality is acceptable. Achieving Rolex perfection would bankrupt them. There is no need for that. And now we see the expectation gap. Quality is relative to expectation. A 10 euro watch just needs to tell a time. A 10,000 euro watch must be a masterpiece. So you have to understand the requirements. What are the customers wanting from me for this specific purchase? Let's recap the important terms. Quality control, it's inspection at the end. Quality assurance happens every stage. TQM is total quality management, including the culture, profits, operations, and everything in and out. And as we learn, quality is a journey. It's a continuous process. It's not an act you do once and then you leave. It is a habit. Aristotle said it, but when he said it, he might have meant about different quality, but still, it's still applicable. Now we come to the last chapter of this unit, inventory and supply chains. This is about the flow of materials from raw goods to finished products in a customer's hands. So operations isn't just about making things, it's about moving them and storing them efficiently. A car that's finished but sits in a field for 6 months isn't making money, it's costing money. That's why inventory and supply chain management are very critical. There are three types of stock. Let me say this loudly so you remember. Inventory is money. Cash tied up in a stock is cash that can't be used for marketing, R&D, or even paying dividends. So stock comes in three forms. First, raw materials. As you can see here, first is raw materials. Inputs waiting to be processed. Wood for a furniture maker, flour for a bakery, leather for a shoe factory, potatoes for a French fries restaurant. So work in progress is goods currently being made but not finished. A car chassis on the assembly line, a half-baked loaf of bread, and finished goods are products ready to be sold. A boxed iPhone, a bag of coffee beans on a supermarket shelf. Each type ties up cash. The goal is to minimize stock without running out. Why hold stock? So why hold stock at first place? There are three reasons. Meet unexpected demand. If an order for 1,000 units comes in today, you can fulfill it immediately. Without stock, you lose the sale. Second, supplier delays. If your delivery truck breaks down, production doesn't stop because you have buffer stock. Third, economies of scale. Buying raw materials in bulk is cheaper per unit. So you buy more than you need immediately. This is just in case philosophy. Safe but expensive. Just in time is bringing in only when you need it. Just in case is bringing in well in advance so that you are safe and you have the buffer. Now the cost of holding stock. What are the burden you have to pay for holding the stock in your place? Let me break down why holding stock is expensive. Storage cost. Renting the warehouse, heating, lighting, security. In some cities, warehouse rent can be 20 euro per square foot per year. That adds up fast. Opportunity cost, the cash tied up in stock could be used for marketing, R&D, or paying off debt. If you have 1 million euro in stock and your bank pays 5% interest, you are losing 50,000 pounds. A year is foregone interest. Shrinkage and obsolescence. Goods can be stolen, damaged, or go out of fashion. Retailers write off millions each year in unsold clothes. Every box in your warehouse is a cost. Now we see the cost of running out. But running out of stock is also expensive, as I said. If you hold it, it's a cost. If you run out of the stock, it's a cost. A stock out is when you have zero inventory in stock only of a product and a customer wants to buy it. So it's like out of stock. So the customer goes to a competitor. You might never get them back. This is a damaged reputation. You look unreliable. If Amazon ran out of stock on Prime Day, would you trust them again? Not really. So idle resources are the problem. Workers and machines stand still waiting for materials. That's idle time. But you still pay wages. Efficiency drops to zero. So you have two options, which are two bad options. Hold too much stock and waste money, or hold too little and lose sales and customer reliability. The art is finding the balance. That's what we will learn here. Inventory control charts. You have to understand, when do I really need to order? What is the maximum level? Let's say 800 units, as you can see on the slide. Reorder level, that is 400 units. This is the average. You need at least this much. Buffer stock is minimum. Let's say this is the time you should definitely order the minimum safety net. If let's say you have to make, you're in a restaurant, you're making potato fries, and you have 800 potatoes in your warehouse or in your restaurant, that means you have little too many potatoes. If you order more potatoes, they might get rotten by the time you have to cook them. So, or you might not have space to put them inside. So 800 is the max. 400 is, let's say, to peel the potatoes and cook them for the next 5 days of your week where you sell the potato fries. But 200 is the bare minimum, that you would use 200 in 2 days. 200 potatoes in 2 days if you get 200 orders a day. So you have to calculate your stock accordingly. Now let's look at the key terms. We've just covered the three types of stock: why hold it, and the cost of both too much and too little, and to use just in time or just in case. Next up, we'll get into the maths, lead time, reorder levels, and the famous stock control charts. That's where inventory management gets really practical. If you see in this slide, you understand lead time, the most critical variable. Let's talk about lead time. The time between placing an order with a supplier, asking them to send you the parcel, and the stock actually arriving. This is the time, the most critical variable in inventory management. Why? Because lead time determines your reorder level, the point at which you need to order more stock. If lead time is 3 days, you order when you have 3 days of stock left. If the supplier is late by just one day, you run out. That's the stock out. So here's the formula you need to memorize. Reorder level is equal to average daily usage times lead time plus buffer stock. Let's do an example. You sell 100 units per day. Lead time is 5 days. You want 200 units of buffer stock for safety. Reorder level is 100 times 5 plus 200. That is 700 units. So when your stock is 700, you order more. By the time the new stock arrives in 5 days, you will have sold the 500 units you expect to sell during lead time, and you will land exactly at your buffer 200. That's the maths of inventory management. Now, let's look at the control chart. This is something you should practice drawing, like an exam activity in your notebook. Sketch a stock chart based on this data. Maximum stock 1000 units, reorder level 400 units, buffer stock 100 units, lead time 2 weeks, just the way you saw in the previous slides about how to draw an inventory chart. So now let's come to inventory strategy. This is just-in-time approach, the lean approach. If we revisit JIT with fresh eyes, just-in-time involves holding zero buffer stock. Raw materials arrive from suppliers exactly when they need it on the production line, not a day earlier and not a day later. The pros are the drastically reduced storage cost, improved cash flow, less waste. The cons are equally huge. It's highly risky. It requires a perfect relationship with suppliers, zero defects, and predictable demand. Any delay, any defect, any surge in demand, and the whole factory stops. If you see, Toyota invented jet, they famously had a single supplier for a specific type of piston. When that supplier's factory caught fire, Toyota had to halt production for weeks. Even they learned that JIT needs some buffer for critical components. Let's compare JIT and just in case. JIT and JIC. Let me give you a clear side-by-side comparison. So JIT in case is traditional. Just in case is traditional. Philosophy is safety first. Cost, high storage cost. The risk is low of stockouts and best for uncertain demand, unreliable suppliers. Just in time, on the other hand, the philosophy is efficiency first. Cost is low storage cost, high risk of stopping production, and it's best for predictable demand. Excellent suppliers. There's no right answer for every business. A hospital holding emergency blood supplies uses JIT. You cannot run out. You cannot say, I don't have the blood in the hospital. A car plant making thousands of identical cars might use JIT. They know the trade off. So, and we should also know the trade off, like where is it an emergency? Where can I use a JIT? Where can I use a JIT? That is something you should understand. Now we come to supply chain management. Is not just about business, it's about the whole network, from raw material suppliers to logistic providers to retailers to the final customer. Here's a story. When the Icelandic volcano erupted in 2010, it closed European airspace for a week. BMW had to halt production because a single supplier of a specific electronic component couldn't fly their parts from China. That's the fragility of global supply chains. One volcano, one strike, one war that's happening currently in the Middle East, Southwest Asia, one pandemic like COVID and stops everything. Now we understand why supply chain management, we already learned this. It's about managing the flow of raw materials into finished products to reach the customer in a good way. And the goal is to ensure the right product is reaching the right person at the right time and at the right place at the lowest cost. And the influences are first cost. Are they the cheapest option? These are the influences of supplier choice on you choosing the right supplier so you don't face problems. Are they the cheapest option? This impacts your unit cost and profit. Second, quality. Do their materials meet your standards? Poor quality inputs mean poor quality outputs. Third, reliability. Do they deliver on time? Every time. This impacts your JIT system and your dependability. Fourth, ethics. Do they treat workers well? Use sustainable materials. This impacts your reputation, especially with younger customers. A cheap supplier who delivers late is not cheap. A reliable supplier who uses child labor will destroy your brand. So choose wisely. Now we understood the suppliers. It is from suppliers to retailers. In that process, you have to go through a manufacturer, then a distributor, and then you reach a retailer. You can pause the slide to understand better how the supply chain works in practice. We can understand that with an example of a coffee shop. Let's apply this. You run a premium coffee shop, you need a new coffee bean. Supplier A is very cheap, but delivery is sometimes 2 days late. Supplier B is expensive, fair trade certified, and guarantees next day delivery. For a premium coffee shop, let's imagine something like Starbucks or Costa Coffee. Supplier B is the winner. Reliability allows you to choose JIT. You can order fresh beans every day. Fair trade aligns with your brand image and quality. Customers who pay €4 for a latte care about ethics. The extra cost can be passed on to customers who are willing to pay for quality and ethics. So supplier A might work for a budget diner where price is everything. But for you, no. Know your brand. If you're a premium run coffee shop, you have to think in a premium way, aligning operations to marketing. Now let's look at the next concept, probably one of the last concepts in this entire unit. Mass customization, it means producing goods on a mass scale. So low unit cost while allowing individual customers to tailor the products to their needs. For example, Nike buy, you design your own sneakers. Dell computers, you configure your own laptop online. Even Subway, you choose your bread, fillings, sauces, toppings. That's mass customization. It requires advanced technology and flexible supply chains, but it's a powerful way to combine the efficiency of mass production with the differentiation of a custom product. Now let's look at mass customization of how it reacts with the both worlds, with technology and with the standards. So that's how you can actually ensure mass customization works with your business goals. Now, operational strategy. Outsourcing means using external suppliers to perform non-core business activities. The mantra here, do what you do best, pay others for the rest. So do what you do best, pay others for the rest. Apply designs, Apple designs the iPhone in California. That's their core competence. But they outsource assembly to Foxconn in China because Apple isn't a factory company. It's a design and marketing company, to be very honest. In Cupertino, in California, they don't be sitting building the iPhones. And even most of the iPhones display comes from Samsung. So benefits here are reduce fixed cost, use specialist expertise, allows you to scale up quickly without building factories. Risks, loss of control over quality and labor standards. You lose the control. And remember that stories about poor working conditions at Foxconn? That's a reputational damage. It is falling on Apple as we discussed in the previous chapter. This is the case. Apple's CEO, Tim Cook, was originally the operations director. He was never a supply chain genius. Here's what he did. Apple buys up huge capacity of air freight. They book entire cargo planes to ensure iPhones arrive on launch day. They pay suppliers for exclusive machinery, locking out competitors. They hold massive amounts of cash so they can pay suppliers early for discounts. So what is the result here? Apple has one of the most efficient responsive supply chains in the history. When a new iPhone launches, you can have it in your hand within days anywhere in the world. That's not magic, that's operations. Now, influences on inventory levels. What determines how much stock a business holds? There are three big factors. One is demand, nature of product, and interest rates. So demand is seasonal products like Christmas decorations or Easter eggs need huge stockpiles before the season. After the season, stock levels drop to zero. Nature of product, perishable goods like fresh milk or bread cannot be stockpiled, guys. They have to be made and sold quickly. That forces low inventory levels. And third, interest rates. When interest rates are high, Holding stock is expensive because the cash tied up could be earning interest. So businesses hold less stock. When rates are low, stockpiling is cheaper. Now, extension, we learn the bullwhip effect. This is a fascinating phenomenon. Small changes in consumer demand can cause massive fluctuations in orders up the supply chain. It's called the bullwhip effect. Imagine a shop sells 5% more than expected. The shop manager orders 10% more, just in case. The wholesaler then orders 15% more from the distributor, orders 25% more from the factory, panics and builds a new production line. Then demand returns to normal and everyone is stuck with excess stock. What's the solution here? Better communication, shared data across the supply chain. When everyone knows the real demand, the bullwhip calms down. Now let's understand the value of effective supply chain management. Why bother with all this? Two big reasons: competitive advantage. If your supply chain is faster and cheaper than your rivals, you win. Zara was a H&M. Zara's supply chain is much faster, so they have fresher clothes and less markdown. Customer satisfaction, good SCM, good supply chain management ensures the product is actually on the shelf when the customer wants it. Nothing kills a sales faster than a sorry, we're out of stock. So bad SEM loses sales and damages reputation. Good SEM is invisible, but it's the foundation of success. And if you see, there is no perfect system to have a strategic trade-off. Let me leave you with this truth. Every system has trade-offs. Efficiency versus resilience. JIT is efficient but fragile. JIT is expensive but robust. After the pandemic, COVID, many companies moved from pure JIT to a hybrid, holding buffer stock for critical components. Global versus local. Global sourcing from abroad is cheaper but has longer lead times and higher carbon footprint. Local sourcing is faster and greener but more expensive. There is no perfect system. There are only choices. Your job is to make the right choice for your strategy, and in the exams, defend it why you are choosing this. Give strategic and informative answers. Now let's come to the end of the unit. Applying supply chains. Here's a scenario. You are the operations director for a car manufacturer. You use JIT, zero buffer stock. A massive storm has closed the port where your engine parts arrive. You have stock for just 4 hours. What do you do? Option A, halt production immediately, or idle workers, idle machines, lost output. Or option B, fly the parts in the air freight. Extremely expensive it is going to be, and air freight can cost 10 times sea freight. There is no good option, guys. You can comment on what you think. That's the risk of JIT. Many manufacturers learned this lesson during COVID. Now they keep buffer stock for critical components, a hybrid system. Efficiency is great, but survival is always better. As we recap, JIT, JIG, supply chain. And now for the exam, let me give you a technique. Firstly, briefly define the key terms and relate it to the business in the case study. If you get a question from a case study for 9 marks or a 16 marks. Second, apply use specific numbers from the text. Labor productivity is currently 200 units per employee, but the industry average is 250. Third, build logical chains. Use phrases like this leads to, which means that, consequently, relatively. Show how operations impacts the whole business. Fourth, evaluate. Show both sides. On one hand, however, on the other hand, it depends on so and so. So finally, conclude, rank the factors. Ultimately, the most important factor is so and so. So that's how you give a better answer. So practice this structure, it works. So if we recap everything, you understood about transformation, outputs, inputs, the main objectives, the cost, quality, speed, flexibility, the trade-offs between them, measuring performance, labor productivity, unit cost, capacity utilization, and also about JIT, JIC, lean production, Kaizen, automation, economies of scale, which are purchasing, technical, managerial, financial, and we saw diseconomies of scale. We saw external economies of scale like Silicon Valley, and diseconomies of scale are like communication, bureaucracy, and zero motivation. So, and we learned about quality, QC versus QA, which is quality control versus quality assurance, and total quality management, benchmarking, cost of quality, why is prevention better than inspection and failure. And we learned about inventory and supply chains, three types of stock: raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods. And again, we learned about just in case and just in time, lead time, reorder level, buffer stock, the bullwhip effect, outsourcing, offshoring, mass customization. You covered the entire unit for specification. Operations, go back, practice the calculations. And remember, operations is where strategy meets reality. Get it right and you win. Get it wrong, and even the best marketing can't save you. I am Banu, and thank you from B School Erudite. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to pass their A levels or AS exams. See you in Unit 5 very soon. And the next video won't be this long. So it's going to be finance. It's going to be fun. Thank you. Good luck with the exams.